Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our new coffee break series where we talk about the chemistry of soft washing. Today's speakers will be David Benoit and Rachel Hart. They will
Morning.
be talking about the three pillars of stains, roof and building cleaning, and then our SafeCare program. Okay, cool.
First of
David.
all, thank you everybody for joining us. This session will also be recorded and on our YouTube channel. So if you want to share it with your councils or any of your coworkers as well. And for the record, Rachel will be doing most of the talking.
Most
I'm
of it.
I'm I'm just here to keep her. So we're not here for an hour. We're here for our 20 minutes. Respect our time. And then if you notice the hat she's wearing is being in action, we'll talk about that later, right? So we'll get to
Yeah.
that. Take that sticker off the hat.
Oh, shoot. Yeah.
We don't
There we
like
go.
those stickers
Oh,
as a
okay.
pet peeve. That's just an inside joke, a pet peeve of mine. But
There you go.
there we go. Now we're perfect, right? So,
Yeah.
okay, let's go to the second slide and let's get this going. So,
All right.
okay, all on you, Rachel.
All right. So I'd like to start off by just kind of identifying soft washing in and of itself. We are not dealing with just organic growth. We're dealing with multiple different surfaces and contaminants on that surface. So there's different products used for each one of these. And most commonly, when it comes to building washes, we're dealing with algae, moss, and mildew. And so with in just dealing with that, we're using a many different types of surfactants and sodium hypochlorite, which is ultimately bleach. The surfactants are different mechanisms to capture the bleach and help it dwell on the building. And so these are kind of situational. There's different surfactants for different surfaces. And then, sometimes, and we'll get into certain areas of the building where bleach kind of just doesn't cut it. You have, some sort of flashing or soffit, and it's kind of deteriorated to the point where it's starting to rust and it's staining onto the building and leaving these big stains. And ultimately, bleach and a surfactant just won't cut it. So we kind of have to know how to adjust and use different types of chemistry. Um, so in terms of these types of things, it's a different types of acids. Acids will break down the rust. It'll break down, the different deposits left by brick and mortar staining, which is like calcium. So you need something a little bit more aggressive to get at those. And then last but not least, we've got different kinds of grease stains and different kinds of grease deposits. Most commonly, traffic and if you've got a building that's really close to a thoroughfare or a corridor where there's a lot of traffic, bleach, you'll spray the bleach on it, kind of just leaves a dark residue, and then you kind of have to switch gears and add some degreasers. A lot of the time we use, well, most commonly we use degreasers in parkades and on, concrete surfaces where there's been oil stains and things like that, and it really helps to lift and refresh the appearance. Although not always will it take the entire stain away. So yeah, we're dealing with many different products and many different surfaces. So in that we kind of have to educate our staff on the ways to use each one of these. So that in and of itself is a whole educational piece that most commonly is just kind of masked by pressure washing. So, when we get into this soft washing, it really is ultimately understanding chemistry, understanding the different uh, chemicals needed for different surfaces, and how to use and when to use these. Um, so I think that, sorry.
One thing I'll add is because as a cleaning company, so we're floor care and janitorial and our exterior cleaning services. That I think Rachel brought up an interesting topic there is that like say we're in a building and we're cleaning the carpets and there's a blood stain or there's a coffee stain or the tea stain or a pet stain. We have different chemistry for each of those. Okay. But people in the exterior cleaning world, oh, we're just going to hit it with more water, more pressure. They don't
Mhm.
think chemistry for exterior cleaning. And that's one thing that separates a professional. Well, we'll use the word amateur as well. So that separation
Hmm.
happens there. And I think a lot of it's just the educational piece around it. So I like how we do this. And I think it's very important to understand that companies, when they're cleaning, the chemistry does the work. Often we're just rinsing off the work that the chemistry has done. So like we have an expression in floor care, if you get your chemistry right, your physicality is much lower. Now the physicality um in the exterior cleaning would be your pressure washer, and it is hard on the technician as well. So okay, let's just get to the second slide. Sorry, I wanted to add that. So I think it was interesting to compare them because
Yeah.
I think exterior cleaners don't rely on chemistry enough. So
Yeah, and so like to the very first line of this slide, it's chemistry matters. When it comes to roof treatment, there's a wide variety of methods out there being used. We ultimately rely solely on chemistry, not solely, but like there's different situations where there's a lot of overgrowth, and we'll go in and we, use minimal agitation. We use, air agitation. Sometimes we'll brush off a roof depending on how much debris is on it. But ultimately, our goal is to not create damage. And so like all of these things, when we're using chemistry, we're avoiding the use of force. It ultimately, I've watched many different companies and roofing companies, and I've seen all the different programs that they offer and the warranties that they offer. But at the end of the day, you have an uneducated person up on your roof scraping away and kind of damaging the roof surface. And I think that that's kind of like smoke and mirrors when it comes to like a warranty program for roofing companies. Their sole goal is to you know um, do repairs and have the ability to do replacement. So their vested interest, I don't see that being the long-term health of the roof. And so this is industry standard when it comes to roofers, but when it comes to an educated team that does treatment, we try to avoid that at all costs. The scraping, it kind of damages, like anything that you're using physically to agitate the roof will ultimately remove the granules, and that's the last thing that we want to do. When we use the treatment, it ultimately embeds itself. We use a certain type of surfactant that encapsulates the bleach. So when we're spraying it onto the building, it's pre-mixed, and basically the soap, which is a surfactant, encapsulates the bleach, and ultimately finds its way and embeds its way into the roots of the shingle and into the roots of the algae and beyond everything. It's not just on the surface. So scraping ultimately only kind of scrapes it off the surface. You leave the root system behind. You see a lot of regrowth within it. That's why annually they're out there scraping away at things. And if you could imagine how much damage that's creating, I wish we had some way of kind of portraying that, but I think in your mind you can kind of visualize that.
So can I
Um,
make a joke? So you're
yeah,
not dealing with, I know I'm super funny, but you're not dealing with the root of the problem.
no, ultimately you're not.
Yeah. Okay. I know, I'm
It's
not
like
a
one of
comedian.
those
Sorry.
silly
Yeah.
dad jokes, but yeah,
Yeah. I'm
ultimately,
a dad. I'm a dad. Oh, yeah. So okay.
ultimately we're trying. Our goal is to not have to come back within a 3-year span. And so that with our program that's offered, we try to get it done right the first time. We offer a follow-up visit at kind of 6 months, to go and address, any kind of issues that were kind of, nothing's done perfect. You've got areas that are going to have, regrowth, sometimes it's on the strata to do a bit of annual maintenance around debris. Like we can't stop the trees from shedding on the roofs. We can't stop the tree from having a really dark tucked away corner. And so that's where this program kind of really adds the value. Long term, you're not scraping away at the roofs and continually doing this year after year, causing more damage and more damage. The the treatment we use extends the roof's lifespan. It doesn't, cause this repeated damage. And so I think if we can look at it for what it is, and ultimately we're applying a product that provides long-term solution. We're not just scraping away at your roof surface. So I think, we ultimately are creating more like a longer lifespan, reducing the amount of times that repairs are needed, reducing the amount of times somebody's up on the roof, because that's important too. The amount of people running around on your roof all the time and walking around on the roof, that creates damage. There's so many things that just physical contact with the roof creates. And so by the
Not to
software,
mention,
yeah.
yeah, not to mention the health and safety as well. But I will say here, I want to point out one thing on here, and just to summarize the roof treatment. So it treats the cause, not just the symptoms. So one thing that we offer, and we can offer that, we offer a 3-year warranty that we have any new growth will come back. Now, Rachel brings up the points of new debris coming down and stuff, so there is some caveats to it. But what that does is, because, tell me, I mean, we'll get into this a little bit, but the chemistry changes the environment of the roof, which is why we
Yes.
can offer that 3-year warranty. Now,
Hmm.
we have to get the service has to be delivered correctly, the chemistry has to be done right, and there are some environmental conditions that will put pressure on that warranty, but that's just the way it is. But we are, we're that's one area that we'll feel confident in. And that what she's talking about is, if you had a roofing warranty with your roofing company, they come by on a set pace. With how they do it is manually, right? So they're creating agitation, where if we're doing it this way, your roof is gonna not regrow. 98% of your roof isn't gonna regrow, and it's gonna look clean. You have better environment. So
Yeah,
I
it
think, yeah,
also we created a new home for your roof. And then, you know what I mean? Like we
people
remove
people people aren't moving in though, Rachel.
no, they are moving in. The algae and the spores and everybody's moving in.
I know. Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
We've given an eviction notice is what we're doing.
Yeah.
That's ultimately the goal.
But
And
in a
then
safe care way. Sorry,
in
I know I'm on fire here. Yeah. So
you
yeah.
know, ultimately we're trying to remove the unwanted guests, and in an inhabitable environment is the ultimate way to do that, not just going out and physically removing it. It boils down to, we're getting to the root cause. And
Let's change gears a little bit. Let's talk
okay.
about building washing now. The next slide.
Okay.
So it's a little different. The how they wash the buildings, but Rachel will take us through that, and what our SafeCare program and soft washing means for the washing of the building.
Okay, so ultimately we're dealing with a different beast. With we'll touch on this a little bit. It's, roof treatment is a leave-on product. And now when it comes to building surfaces, we've got many different surface: vinyl, we've got stucco, we've got brick, we've got concrete, we've got many different surfaces, painted concrete, all these different surfaces. They respond differently. And ultimately we're not trying to leave a treatment on. We still want to create and execute the same process, but we don't want to leave some of these surfaces do better under less uh, chemistry, if that makes sense. So you don't need as much to do as much. So when it comes to building surfaces, every surface is different. When it comes to stucco, we have porous, kind of embedded kind of surface where we have to go a little bit stronger. And then when it comes to brick, that's even more porous, and we have to go on the even stronger side. So vinyl and kind of surfaces like plastic surfaces, or stuff like soffits and kind of painted coated things respond because they're not as porous. So the chemistry is really important here, because we don't want to be wasting product and using too much. And in some of these products, like a higher ratio of bleach will actually create more damage than it does good. So we really, when it really comes down to it, education is a huge piece to this. And we're trying to avoid, the idea of just simple pressure washing. work smarter, not harder. But at the end of the day, what we're up against in this industry is ultimately, we have the one-man show with the pressure washer. You're getting a better price, but what are you actually doing to those surfaces in the meantime? Because high pressure is the ultimate. It's the same as scraping away at a roof. You can take off paint, you can take off the coated surface, you can damage the stucco, you can, all of these things are super important when it comes to long-term health. And that can be alleviated with the understanding and the education around how to use these different chemicals and the ratios to use. So that's a big piece in educating our staff and making sure that the technicians that are on site, excuse me, understand all these different things. And we're just not out there, using high pressure to do it all. It ultimately is a lot more work to do high pressure, but if you're not educated around or have the equipment and the knowledge to use soft washing, then that's what you're stuck with. And that's the easiest, industry standard kind of thing out there. But we're trying to, change the game a little bit here and educate people in around, how to go about this in a safe way.
One thing I'll add there, if it's okay, is that, okay, so say you hire a plumber, electrician, a carpenter. Um, there are standards and certifications and trainings, and often a lot of schooling that goes into that. When you hire someone to clean your building, they can simply put up their hand and say, "Yeah, I can do it," which is great. The ambition's there. But do they have the skill? Do they have the experience? And do they have some kind of training? So in the exterior cleaning industry, we can't send someone to BCIT for 4 years to learn how to do all this. So we have to have internal training systems. We have to, we have to connect to the overall community. We have to share best practices, and we have to train them ourselves and certify them ourselves, which we do. And I think that's one thing when you're evaluating quotations from people, is to actually ask, because if you get a building washing project goes wrong, that's a disaster. You can have 200 people in that building and they're all losing their minds on you as a property manager or a building manager. And you could be causing damage. You could be causing inconvenience to people with the tenants or the owners with workflow. And it can cause a lot of problems. So what I'm saying is that I think you need to look at the experience of people doing the work, and that matters, right? So again, we treat cleaning as specialty cleaning. So trained technicians using specialized equipment, that's specialty cleaning. And I think you have to have that approach when you're hiring your contractors. Okay, let's go to the last slide. We only have a couple minutes left, and then we'll get Rachel to walk us through this, and then we'll take some questions and get on with our Thursday. Here we go. This puts it all together.
Yeah. So I think at the end of the day, it really boils down to chemistry, education, a program, a culture. There's these key things that really kind of matter. We've educated our staff on how to use the chemistry. We've thought of the long-term building requirements and needs. Each program has its own perks. When it comes to our SafeCare program, we have a 3-month follow-up. Everybody's, oh, what happens if it does this right away? And we're relying on our chemistry to so we're not finding ourselves returning and having to deal with all of these issues. And so, that educational piece on how to use what chemistry on what surface and how that's going to benefit is really key in our, benefiting the building. So, when we really get down to it, I think that we've kind of touched on all the different components of what the strata is really looking for. We're trying to, reassure in the forefront of coming to the building that we, understand all of these things. We know that, if we come to the building a few months later, there's still some issues. You've got that benefit of us, coming to check on things. When it comes to the roof treatment program, that's a huge piece in understanding, your maintenance for the next few years. You don't have all of these things. Yes, there's some caveats of, you have to get rid of the overgrowth, or not the overgrowth, but the overburden, meaning, the shedding of some trees onto the roof, which will ultimately, expedite the growth. So there's some pieces to that we have to incorporate for each different kind of building. Obviously, if you're sitting along a tree line and you have these evergreens shedding onto the building, it's going to start to grow back faster. So there's a piece there that has to be considered ultimately for that to be successful. But I think each and every building is different, and we have a 6-month period return to check on areas, and then after that, once we've got it to a place where we've changed the environment and we have everything where we need it, it really boils down to just like normal maintenance. You're not looking at having all of this regrowth and having to deal with it. What do we do in 2 years? We have to spend all this money again. No, we've given you that peace of mind in our 3-year program. So there's another component, the health and safety component. Each and every one, we've got this core program, which we're not required to have. It's an ultimate, kind of like keep us accountable to all work safe regulations and rules. And all of our staff either has some rope access experience or some pretty in-depth fall protection and fall arrest training. And so all of these factors are, kind of put us at, the forefront of like industry standard. It
Okay,
ultimately,
let's get into some questions. Rachel can talk soft washing until
I can
next
go
Tuesday.
forever.
But let's get into some questions. So I'll kick it off, and then we'll get some questions from the participants here. Is that okay? One of the things, and one of the FAQs we get quite a bit is that we treat a roof, we're killing the moss, we're changing the environment. What happens to that moss that comes off the roof?
The moss degrades and sheds down into the gutters. It degrades. It kind of like taking. It ultimately becomes like a sediment. Now I can see in buildings where there's drain tile or the plumbing leads directly into the drain tile, that could be an issue, but it ultimately breaks it down ultimately into nothing and sheds down through the gutter system. So I don't see it's so it's such a slow process for that to happen where it doesn't actually impact any of those things. It's not like all these big pieces of moss are going to
I
be
think that's what they think. It's a big chunk is going to come off and just
no, it doesn't work
So,
like that. It just slowly degrades and dies and sheds off. Like if you've ever seen your shirt where you've gotten like some bleach stains, kind of
that's
like
why
on
we
my
got that hat. There we go. Yeah.
you can eventually poke a hole through that little area because it's kind of disintegrates. And so to alleviate any kind of concerns around there being all of this organic matter, being pushed into the gutter system, it really doesn't work like that. So
Okay, next question we'll have is so the one thing is you'll see in the picture on my right hand side of the balcony's got a tarp over and stuff like that. So one of the things, let's talk about plants and what you
okay.
have to do to make it safe for plants.
Okay, so bleach and is not necessarily bad for plants at a high ratio, like a strong mix of bleach. The foliage can be burnt. Ultimately, we have to take steps, and as you can see in the picture, our staff has a whole bucket full of tarps, and we'll go ahead and we'll go to a building and we'll say he's got some plants over here. Ultimately, we just cover things, and on the ground where you've got all these pretty flowers and everything, we have to pre-soak things. We have to we have to do the work around not just damaging things. A little bit of bleach, it breaks down so fast, it becomes inert within a matter of 30-40 minutes. Once in the ground, it ultimately becomes O2, salt, and water. And so these things are not bad for the environment. So I think there's a huge misconception around environmental damage and what it can do, and that's a whole education piece in and of itself. So
Okay, so that's one answer. Any questions from the crowd, Kevin?
Not yet so far, but if you do have any questions, feel free to raise your hand and then I can prompt you to talk through this.
Or you just type it into the feed.
Or
I'm
yeah.
just I'm just going through the other things. So we'll wrap up in a second here. So to summarize, while we wait and see if anybody's got any more things they need. One, thank you for joining. It's awesome you guys are here. Two is if you need a copy of this slide deck, just shoot us an email. Kevin will get over to you in a second. Three, if you want a copy of the recording, we'll also transcribe it. You can make it a podcast for your drive home tonight for one of your colleagues. And one thing as a property manager is that when you're sourcing quotes for anything with certain trades, we talked about it. It's industry standards you can require in their certification specifications. When you're sourcing exterior cleaning services, it takes a little more diligence on the property manager side. It doesn't take a lot, but it takes some diligence to make sure you're getting with a company that knows what they're doing. And also, there's a huge variety. Like we'll get phone calls from somebody, and we say we quote the soft wash the complex, and we're $15,000, and somebody comes in at $5,000. Well, that drives some questions. Okay. And people misquote things sometimes. Maybe they're doing it right at $5,000, but I don't think so because the chemistry cost is quite high, and also your results won't be the same. So if you're going to hire someone to do soft washing or roof treatment rebuilding, one, make sure they have a warranty. Two, make sure they're following safe work practices. And three, make sure they understand their chemistry. I think it's a big thing. Out of Rachel's, what she's talking about here is the chemistry is so important. It's often overlooked in the exterior cleaning world, just by the nature of it. But it's not with other services. So anything come in there, Kevin, or?
None right now.
Okay. Well, we answered everything so well. So we'll wrap it up. Stay tuned for a Starbucks gift card. We appreciate you guys joining us. We're going to have more of these throughout the spring and the summer here. If you ever have any topics that you guys want to talk about, shoot them to us and we'll put one together, right? But it'll be available on our YouTube channel, and it's a beautiful sunny day, and I hope you guys don't work too hard, and we'll leave you alone. Thanks for your time.
Okay, one more thing here. Sorry.
Yeah. 10 seconds. 10 seconds.
Okay.
10 seconds. Yeah.
If you guys do have a building that's unsure and you want to understand, they want to understand, we have no problem coming out to do a test area. And that'll kind of,
good point. Yeah.
It'll help because it'll be me doing it. So ultimately I can help educate, help steer them in the right direction and answer any of those questions. So ultimately we're open to that with any one of your buildings. So just let us know.
One more point, and I'll keep myself the 10-second rule, is we had a really good success story. We had a building in Surrey, the gas fireplaces, and you get all the soot that goes into the siding and all the black staining, right? We used chemistry and removed it, and it looked fantastic. They were looking at repainting their building and all this different stuff, and just based on the chemistry and the right kind of solution for it, had success. So it can be done. So, okay, we'll leave you alone, and thank you very much, guys. Enjoy your day. So,
thank you.
Thank you,
bye,
everyone.
guys.
Have a good one.
Bye.
Bye-bye.